Are you interested in investing in real estate or curious about how you potentially could if it's something that you wanted to explore further? I've had the unique privilege and opportunity to invest in over 7 different properties but before the age of 30, netting in transactions well over $750,000. And I had the positive experience of being able to stay profitable on every single one of those transactions. Now, I've seen some real estate investing videos on YouTube and social media, and one of the reasons why I was motivated to make this video is it feels like a lot of the information that's being shared is oftentimes like maybe regurgitated. It feels like, maybe it came from another source or it was read, and it makes me wonder, I believe that there's some core principles that I've experienced that should definitely be known to anyone that wants to get involved in the industry or at least give it a try. And a lot of these things aren't being addressed. So that was the motivation for making this video, that I feel like I have some unique experiences and insights that I'm not really hearing in other places. So if you are interested in investing in real estate, I would say you're in the right place first and foremost, and be sure to smash that like button, and let's go ahead and dive right into the video. If you are serious or passionate about real estate, I would highly recommend you watch this video all the way through till the end. My 7th, 8th, and 9th tip are super juicy. I'm going over a major pitfall that you definitely need to be aware of, whether you're a new or experienced investor, a massive advantage or tool or strategy that you can implement, and probably my biggest tip of all. So stay tuned until the end. You're not going to want to miss out. The first concept that I would share with you all that is probably true, not just in real estate, but in all forms of business, is that working with family can be hard and challenging. I remember being 21 years old, living out in California, and attending my first real estate investing seminar, and ended up meeting a young woman who I believe was like 25, maybe 26 at the time, and had been actively investing in real estate and had developed a portfolio of over 200 properties. So being exposed to this at a young age, I saw this as a means that with hard work and effort, that I could create wealth generation for myself. So I became passionate and very, very interested in the topic, ended up reading hundreds of books on the category, but I didn't have the capital or resources at the time, or what I believed in at the time. So moving back home, I decided to kind of pitch my father to take equity from his home or extra resources that he had and kind of start this real estate investing business. However, noticing perspectives can be dramatically different. I ended up being a 49% partner versus his 51% contribution. And in doing so, a lot of what would be effective strategy for being successful oftentimes got overruled by what he thought was correct. So even if I had a good idea or insight, not being 100% control of your business or your money or the moves or directions that your company is moving towards can put a lot of strain on the relationship and also the type of deals that you put together. One huge benefit of partnering up with family at the time was my dad had a lot of the practical knowledge and application to restore and build properties. He came from a long history of diners and banquet halls, an empire that my grandfather ended up building over a number of years up in New Jersey and New York City. And my father could literally build a house from the ground up, everything from electrical to plumbing. So he had a lot of the practical skills that I wasn't, keen to. I didn't know how to put up drywall. I didn't know how to, frame a structure. But I had a lot of the knowledge or the practical application from the real estate investing standpoint that would create wealth generation long term. So for this reason, our partnership at the time seemed like, kind of a match made in heaven. The problem, however, later on ended up being our difference in investing strategies. Because I was a 49% owner in our company, Peninsula Real Estate Solutions, and my father was a 51% shareholder, essentially he had the last word for a lot of our moves. Now, what I had learned from real estate investing and a lot of the gurus or professionals that had come before me was to kind of come from a standpoint of the four green houses, red hotel analogy that comes from Rich Dad Poor Dad, the idea of having multiple properties and using it to build equity and kind of scale up over time. A lot of people will refer to this as the BRRRR method, the buy, repair, rent, and refinance. So essentially you control the asset, you put money into it, you increase the equity value, and then you take your money out, but you maintain control of the asset itself. My father, coming from a little bit more practical and simple concept, wanted to build equity in our business and decided that it was better suited that we fix the homes and then flip them, which is a little bit more of like an HGTV perspective. Now, this can be a successful way to invest in real estate. However, I'll explain a little bit later on how that ended up being kind of a bone of contention and ended up being a little bit of the downfall of our company. Long story short, our emotions and personal relationship was a little bit too close. That father-son relationship ended up being kind of the downfall of our company, and we ended up splitting the equity and going separate ways, and it ended up dissolving that relationship. So I would say, in terms of working with a partner, it can be very powerful and beneficial, but sometimes working with family, even if it appears to be an easy route, can be challenging to impossible at times. The second lesson that I learned from investing in real estate is that credit matters. Being a young person and relocating to the other side of the country in 2008, hindsight being 2020, was not the most positive shift for my life and my financial future, and it ended up crippling my situation in regards to my investing potential later on, which kind of put me a little bit more dependent on family, kind of like tip number one that I referenced earlier. So unlike having a lot of opportunity and being able to move in different directions that I wanted independently, I ended up being reliant on other people and individuals. So I would encourage you, if you are interested in investing in real estate, if you have the means to improve or correct your credit, I would highly recommend doing so. One of the core principles of investing in real estate, OPM, or other people's money, if you want investors or specifically banking institutions to lend you money to do projects, your credit has to be pretty good in the first place. Otherwise, you're going to be limited to whatever funds that you have and more creative financing methods. However, if your credit is not the best or not the strongest, it will make investing in real estate a little bit harder. So if it is something that you're serious and passionate about pursuing, do make sure that you strengthen your credit as best as possible. That way you have the most opportunities to invest and acquire the resources that you need in a timely manner. The third lesson that I would share with you in regards to investing in real estate that I've learned over the years is that people want properties turnkey. And it's amazing to me that in the sphere of real estate investing that this concept doesn't get talked about more. I haven't seen it in a lot of books, and it really kind of came about through personal experience. Closing transactions quickly and efficiently, if your house is sitting on the market for a number of weeks, months, or even years, your money is tied up in that real estate. So that's not a very effective business model. Essentially, we want to be doing more transactions more frequently with the least amount of risk and the most amount of profit over a period of time. And oftentimes, the reason why you're making or you have the opportunity to make a lot of money in real estate is you're solving people's problems. Most people don't have the skills or the talent to remodel a kitchen or put in a new bathroom. At the end of the day, when it comes to selling, flipping, or getting interest in your property in the first place, understand that a lot of people don't have a lot of skills and they want to take money, and if they're going to choose your house versus the neighbors, they want something that is done, completed, and out of their hair. They don't want an ongoing project. Most of these people have jobs, lives, families, etc. And in some instances, the way they buy the house is basically the way that it's going to stay for a number of years. To simplify this concept as much as possible, you want your home, your property, your investment, your project to be the most obvious choice in the entire network, whether it's the MLS or you're advertising within your own personal group or sphere, that it is a no-brainer that this is the best choice for the value, for the quality. The reason why I know this principle holds up to be true is because between 2008 and 2010, we actually sold 3 or 4 different properties within the first 2 weeks of listing them. 2 specific properties actually sold within the first 5 days, and 1 property sold on the second day of being listed. It was literally the second family that ended up walking through the home. They put an offer in the day of. So when it comes to investing, you want to get the intention is to flip the property, we want to get our money out or get our ROI as soon as possible so we can do more projects and we don't have to risk potentially, our money being held up and getting buried by ongoing costs. The fourth lesson that I learned from investing in real estate is what I would describe as the ideal or perfect investment. Now, this comes down to my personal opinion and others may disagree. And it's funny because a lot of gurus would say that the deal of the century comes around once a week and that every opportunity is really special in its own right and it depends on the circumstances. However, if I were to isolate my ideal or favorite type of property, we kind of ended up coming up with a formula which was 3 bedrooms and 2.5 baths ideally. Now, the psychology of the reason why we would target these specific properties over maybe something that was larger or even smaller typically I want a property that I'm going to invest in that is going to pertain to the largest potential group of people that would essentially be interested in it. Now, if I'm looking at a 1-bedroom studio, that might be great for an eligible bachelor. Or if I'm looking at a $500,000 property, there might be a bigger return for that property. However, it may sit on the market longer. Not everyone may fit into that size property, first and foremost. So 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths seem to be a perfect fit because you're typically looking at a family or a growing family that wants to get established. I've noticed 1 or 2 bathrooms can be a little bit sketchy. That can definitely turn someone off. We ended up actually adding a bathroom to a home. That is very difficult and can be very expensive because it was not super popular with the people that were viewing it. So having 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths is pretty ideal. You want to have that half bathroom for visitors and having enough space that someone can kind of grow, set roots, maybe have a study. But overall, if the house is too big or too small, you may be pushing yourself out of interest from certain buyers. The reason why this concept is so important is because you want to stay away from structural repairs. Things like a new roof, HVAC, foundation, or even adding a new addition to the property are insanely expensive and time consuming. You want to stick to resurfacing, and if the property doesn't meet the square footage or the needs of someone moving into the property, you're going to add a lot of headache and a lot of cost. So you want to keep things as simple as possible, especially when you're talking about investing efficiently. Thankfully, we were able to learn this lesson pretty early on a small scale, but it became apparently obvious that this is such a huge impact on your ROI and your overall cost for the project that we literally got to a point where if there were any structural issues, it didn't matter how amazing the deal could possibly be perceived as, that we literally just walked. And I would say this, there are so many opportunities in real estate. There's so many houses and homes there. And it may not be this week, but it literally could be the next day or literally 7 days from now. Something will come on the market and it'll be just as nice. And it's amazing how many projects we would get involved in and we look on the MLS and something else had come about when the market was totally dry. So I would say, you make money when you buy, not when you sell. And once you purchase the property, you're tied up, you're committed, and you have to finish that project A to Z. So if you run into a major structural issue, it could be the end of your project, and you don't want to be in a situation where you're losing money or you're literally spending the next maybe 2, 3, or even 6 months stuck with a home that you can't even make money on. The 6th lesson that I learned from investing in real estate is what I would refer to as the 3 times rule. If you are a new, amateur, or even growing real estate investor, I would say whatever you perceive your cost for a project, multiply it by 3. Especially in our first 3 projects, I would say maybe we had the expectation that we were going to be putting in maybe about $10,000 into the project to put new carpet, resurface, etc. And by the end, it was much closer to 30. And I would say until we got into a rhythm, this 3 times rule was pretty accurate. That's not saying that those projects weren't profitable, they just weren't nearly as profitable as we had expected. So giving yourself a tremendous amount of buffer is a much more realistic approach to your investing and making sure that you're not ending up upside down with your investments in the first place. You definitely don't want to run into a situation where you're undercapitalized or if you don't have the financial means to finish a project. I can't tell you the number of times where I've seen foreclosures or heard about people's experiences where they ended up upside down or losing a project entirely because they were undercapitalized and they didn't plan properly for the amount of resources and the amount of money that they had to put into a project to see it to completion. Personally, what I noticed for $100,000 to $200,000 single family homes, typically the investment was anywhere between $15,000 to $30,000 realistically to get the house totally turnkey and basically looking brand new. We do everything from new moldings, new carpet, brand new kitchen, and we try to update the bathrooms to look as nice as possible, oftentimes adding new doors and landscaping to the property throughout. The 7th lesson that I learned from investing in real estate is that projects typically take months, not weeks to complete. And no matter how efficient or how effective that you are in terms of turning over a project, typically it's going to take a lot longer than you expected. So if you are in the process of leaning on your investments for your income, I would say this is definitely a recipe for kind of disaster. When we were pursuing our projects, I had a full-time job. My father was still working, and this is something that we were doing basically after hours and on the weekends very aggressively. The 8th lesson that I learned from investing in real estate comes down to strategy. Specifically, what I'm referring to is renting and refinancing versus the concept of flipping. Now, I know there's a lot of different strategies that you can apply in terms of investing in real estate, but specifically focusing on these two because they're a little bit more fundamental, and it's what I have the most experience with. And hindsight being 2020, this is one thing that I wish I knew or had more insight in when I had first started, or at least my partner had more insight in. Knowing what I know now, this is the one concept that I would do differently that would have increased our overall gains and would have changed the kind of a trajectory of our company over a number of years. Now, ultimately, when we had first started, the idea and the principle was to restore properties, get them as nice as possible. We were looking at specifically foreclosures from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and then we were restoring the properties and then essentially flipping them for a profit. Oftentimes we were taking maybe $50,000 to $70,000 properties and then turning them over for say $150,000, $160,000. More or less coming close to doubling our money each time. We were net positive on all of our projects, and thankfully we didn't lose money on any projects, and our turnaround time was pretty impressive. Now, dividing that between 2 people is a healthy increase in our income over the course of the year. So it's something that I would recommend. Even if you were just interested in dabbling in flipping, there's nothing wrong with the idea of flipping a property. However, the more enlightened perspective, knowing what I know now, I can see how if we had done things a little bit differently, we'd be in a much better financial position, not only for myself, my family, but our portfolio as well. So I can think of one specific property that I believe we acquired it for around, say, $60,000 and ended up selling it for about $130,000. Now, looking at comps years and years later, this is probably 5 or 6 years later after the completion of that project, and we ended up selling that property. I believe it was about 1,500 square foot. It was a 3-bedroom, 3-bath, beautiful. The monthly payment on the property was a VA loan. I believe it was around $750 a month, not a whole lot. So anyway, that property today has increased in equity value and is about $190,000. Now, you can't always expect that properties are going to increase in value, but traditionally there's a 3% increase in equity values in the history of mankind. This is why more millionaires come from real estate than any other industry, short of inheritance and digital commodities. So had we known this, had we maintained that property, let's say we had a positive ROI, rented the property, okay? We've increased the equity value, we pull all of the money or value, approximately 90% in Virginia, from that location. We hold on to that business asset. Now, we've essentially pulled our money out. It's the same as selling it. However, we would have been getting a positive cash flow if our rent was, say, if our mortgage was about $800 with an aggressive interest rate, even back then, and we were, say, renting the property, realistically would have went from about, say, $1,200 to $1,300 in our area. That would have been a $500 to $600 positive return on investment. That's passive cash flow. It's a hot topic these days. People want to have money that's continuously coming in. That's a business asset. So instead of just flipping and having a one-time transaction, we missed out on the future income that would have been a business asset for a lifetime for our family. Now, there would have been depreciation. We would have maintained the property, but all of that should be factored into, your costs over the course of the year. However, the equity increase over that time period, we would have made an additional $60,000 just off of that one transaction. Now, it's a little bit heartbreaking thinking of our start, and you make money every single day for what you know, and you lose money for every day for what you don't know. But that would have been $60,000 just on one transaction that we would have had more equity. So our portfolio could have been worth, millions of dollars versus, the short-term, relief of selling those properties. Now, it was a great experience. It was very positive. I wouldn't change a thing. However, if I had known this one concept, I would have fallen more into like the BRRRR method, which is essentially we're talking about renting and refinancing after we repair the property versus flipping it. So if you're in real estate, Sometimes it's not just the, the buy low, the sell high, but essentially holding on to something that's a business asset that's going to pay you for a lifetime. In my opinion, that's one of the main reasons why you'd want to get involved with investing in real estate in the first place. The ninth tip that I learned from investing in real estate is a monster, and it could literally save you tens of thousands of dollars and could be one of the biggest pitfalls that you may run into. So on our first investment project, I had the thought or the question, who's going to do all this work? Now, we had the brains and the vision and the capital, so it made sense at the time to potentially hire a general contractor to do a lot of the work for our project. So we decided to hire a general contractor, and unfortunately, the individual that we hired or the team wasn't quite as reputable as we had expected. Long story short, we had drawn up a specific contract for work that needed to be done, and long story short, after paying almost, I believe, $25,000 up front for a lot of this work, really the entirety of this project to get completed. Essentially, we ended up with like 2 months out, and the only thing that was completed was like a deck and some minor work in the interior. I mean, essentially, this house couldn't look further from turnkey or completed. Long story short, this individual ended up walking, and we had to go to court and sue this individual to try to recoup our money. We ended up being profitable on that project. We should have made a whole lot more money, but we never saw a dollar of the money that we sued them for. What we became aware of is, unfortunately, in real estate, especially with general contractors, there is this common concept where you have new guys, and it's almost like a hustle. Essentially, these people are creating LLCs, they start a project, they get money up front, and essentially they walk. And when you go to sue them or take legal action against them, they'll create a new LLC, move shop, etc., and they'll walk with the money. Now, I'm not saying all general contractors fall under this category, but after speaking to other homeowners and other investors, apparently this is a very, very common practice. So the reason why I would talk about this is A, you don't want to fall into a category where you're potentially hiring someone to do the work that you should be overseeing in the first place. And two, you don't want to run into a major financial catastrophe by having an experience like this. So I'd rather share it with you than you run into it personally. I would say in general, the materials that you would acquire or the cost of adding a kitchen or a bathroom is normally like 5 to 7 times more expensive to hire someone else to do the work for you than doing it yourself. I can relate to my father's dream home, if you will. It's ended up spending almost $30,000, $40,000 for a kitchen remodel. Now, in comparison, for some of our investment properties, we ended up putting new cabinets in that might have been $60 to $80 with new surfacing. The entire kitchen might have came out to be like $3,000 or $4,000. So that's a huge difference, and we're not talking about major differences in square footage. So the difference between doing it individually versus hiring someone else is normally, very, very expensive. So as much of the project that you can complete on your own or affordably or with a subcontractor that you can trust, you definitely want to pursue. You want to keep as many tasks as you can isolated to your own network, and I would highly recommend controlling your money and where that money is going. If you hire a plumber and that person doesn't show up, or they need money up front for materials, then they probably weren't that good in the first place, and the question should be, should you even be working with them? Having individuals that you can consistently rely on and pull on throughout your projects is going to make every single project that you do that much easier. And as you get comfortable with and build a reputation with certain subcontractors, you can kind of build a team for yourself that you can consistently reference on, so you have an expectation of this certain level of quality, the time, and the amount of money that you're going to put into each project as you progress. A huge red flag, in my opinion, is individuals asking for money to acquire materials or to secure the project up front. If someone is a professional and they've been doing business for a period of time, they have the resources, they have the money to acquire what they need to complete the work. That's kind of, if you're a carpenter, I should have certain tools to complete the work. I don't need your money to go buy my carpentry tools, right? So in any sense, you want to be wary of that and make sure that you're hiring people either from personal reference, professional reference, asking realtors that you work with, or even friends and family. I feel like word of mouth is really, really good. And then once you've done a couple projects, you'll have people that you know that you can trust and rely on consistently. So full disclosure, I will say I am not the end-all or be-all resource when it comes to real estate investing. My intention with this video more than anything was to share some gems of information that were a little bit unique that I feel would benefit the community, or things that I wish I knew when I first got started on this path. I will say that Real estate, like anything in life, deserves a high level of mastery. There is a relative level of risk and reward in doing so, and I would highly encourage you to seek out this path if it's something that you're interested or passionate in, but do take it seriously, as the financial risks can be pretty substantial. In conclusion, I will say that anything in life that is typically worth doing is oftentimes challenging, real estate being one of those things. And I would say I've had a tremendously positive and rewarding experience in real estate overall. I appreciate and thank you for watching the video up until this point. Hopefully you got some awesome value. Again, be sure to drop a like for the video, subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and I will see you in the next one. As always, live passionately, live abundantly, and go forth and live your legend, my friends. See you next time.